Hey there, fellow learners. I'm excited to share a fantastic resource with you today. Skillshare, the online learning community where creativity thrives. Are you itching to explore new skills and passions? With Skillshare, you have access to thousands of inspiring classes taught by industry experts. Whether you're into illustration, photography, or even mastering Excel, Skillshare will have you covered. And here's the best part. You can learn at your own pace, on your own schedule. No more worrying about fitting those rigid class times into your busy life. With Skillshare, your classroom is wherever you are. Plus, Skillshare's classes are designed to be practical and engaging. You just won't be watching videos like tutorials. You'll be rolling up your sleeves and diving into hands-on projects that will bring your learning to life. Ready to take the next step in your creative journey? Well, here's an exclusive offer just for you, my awesome listeners. When you join Skillshare, you'll have a free month. Yes, that's what you're hearing. You'll have a full free month of Skillshare, which means unlimited access to thousands of classes for less than the cost of a single traditional online course, or like when you would go and pay for a course outside of Skillshare. So do dig into it if you're interested, and do use our link. So our link is skillshare.eqcm.net/APAAT. That's skillshare.eqcm.net/APAAT for a pixel at a time. Thank you so much, and goodbye. Hello, and welcome to A Pixel at a Time, a place to hear about how pixels and passion collide. My name is Inês Lagarto, and I hope you are ready to join the ever-evolving world of games development, exploring it from every angle. Players, developers, and enthusiasts. If you like what you hear and you like to support this podcast, please take a trip to our Patreon and to our store, which will be linked in this episode's description. Today's episode was a super interesting one to record. I was talking to Terry Goodwin, currently working as studio director at Lab42 Games. And I've worked with Terry in the past. I know Terry is a very introverted person, but I do adore Terry. I don't know. I feel like every time we were going out on a company event, or even like when we had some trouble in the studio or something, I always felt like Terry was one of my go-to people in the studio. And I really felt like I could trust them. I felt like our values aligned. So I really cherish the fact that we have managed to keep like our relationship outside of Lab42 when I decided to quit. But more than that, I'm a fan of Terry. Terry is a transgender person, and also like, not afraid of being Terry, I think sometimes in our days, it's very easy to get stuck in our minds and, be afraid of everything, of everyone's perception, especially with the world that we live in, with the social media being so fast and feeling like we are in a constant need of responding to someone else's desire of talking to us, or the constant messages between the groups of friends and all the things. It just feels like we need to be on constant call, per se, And one of the things that I do adore about Terry is the fact that Terry was always very, very strong on keeping the lines to defend your mental health, even when you're working too much or whatever. Terry would be the first one saying, "What the hell are you doing? Go home. Like, I do not pay you to be at this time in the studio," or something like that, which I really, really appreciate. So Terry was one of the first people that made me realize that, it's very easy for us to care about a project and to just stay over and do crunch without noticing. And Terry was like the first person that made me realize that was happening with me. And also like, managing to give me the nudge so that I would get back to a place where I wasn't working more hours than what I was supposed to, and all that kind of stuff. And attention, none of this was because of Lab42 requested it. It was literally me, because I was so into the project that, I was like, no, I need to do this, and I need to do that, and I need to do that. And I think we always need to cherish and make sure we also give back to the communities and people that try to take care of us in a way. So, Terry, thank you so much for that. And thank you for all the learnings you gave me through the last few years when I had the chance to work with you and be your friend. So yeah, this conversation was super, super interesting to have. I tried to interview Terry from different angles and, different ways of perceiving their career evolution. And yeah, I think in the end, even though this was the first episode where I interviewed someone, I'm really, really happy with the result. And I do hope you get very happy with this result too, because this is a different format. So yeah, let me know what you think at the end of the episode. And let's see how did it go with Terry. Hey, you. Yeah, you. This is a small break right at the beginning of our episode to introduce a Pixel at a Time store. So if you do go to my website, www.ineslagarto.online, and you go to the podcast section, yes, I do have a podcast section, you will find loads of amazing merch that you can buy for yourself and support this podcast as well. So that's an amazing way. We do have t-shirts, mugs, we do have pins, tote bags, and have I mentioned socks? Yes, those ones that keep disappearing from our wardrobes and, just missing one of them for no reason at all. So if you are like me and keep losing socks, this is the item for you. Please do check out the store. This is a nice way to support the podcast and keep us going. Go to www.ineslagarto.online and look for the A Pixel at a Time store part. And yeah, go there to support us. Thank you. So, Terry, would you mind introducing yourselves very shortly, telling us your name, pronouns, please?
Oh, I'm Terry Goodwin. My pronouns are they, them. I'm the studio director of Lab42 Games, a sumo digital studio.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for joining us on the podcast today, Terry. So I'm going to start with some short questions, okay, just to get us warmed up for the most difficult ones, let's say it that way. Oh my God. So a good one that I love to talk about just because it's so easy to get very into the day-to-day of games development and thinking about the stresses at work and all that kind of stuff. So any obvious non-game related that you might have that you have been pursuing lately, or anything you want to pursue or that you have been starting that you would like to share?
Non-games related.
Yes.
That's really tough because I have a very basic one-track mind and it's video games most of the time. I've been reading a lot.
There you go.
Specifically, it came from gaming, but it's not gaming. I'm playing a Warhammer game from my childhood recently, and I've never really been into Warhammer. So I got into the books for Warhammer. So I've read 3 Warhammer books in the past couple of weeks.
Okay, in the last few weeks. Okay, that's a lot. So you really get into things. When you get into things, you really get into things.
I do. Yes.
That's super cool. Anything that you learned from Warhammer books that you didn't know about Warhammer? How's that experience going for you?
I guess I didn't really think about the fact that it encompasses a lot of genres, which is interesting because it got me thinking about how it's just, to me, Warhammer's just action, military, fake fantasy, sci-fi thing. Yeah. And there's actually one of the books I read is very horror focused, and another one it's all about it gets quite deep into what it means to be a vampire and things like that. And it's I'd never thought that franchise really offered. Of course, now thinking about it, it's of course there's a billion books. There's a billion. They want to make it so wide. But I guess it got me to think that things that you think are in a box that you've constructed in your mind for them, actually it's not.
Yeah.
You shouldn't make that assumption about things.
Yeah, 100%, right? Especially when you're working again and now starting to tie into video games, things are never as linear as we think, right? As I just started by saying to you off record before I started interviewing you. And it's super interesting because we created these boxes in our heads, this is this is that. But most of the times things do connect together, right? And it makes it harder to separate. Which leads me to my next question, actually, which is, what's your favorite game or saga?
Favorite game? Probably Dark Souls 2.
Dark Souls 2, okay.
Dark Souls 2 specifically.
Yeah, and why? Can you tell us why?
Because it's the gameplay of the Dark Souls games and related games are just my favorite ways of interacting with, like my favorite movement and sort of combat and all that sort of stuff. But Dark Souls 2 is really weird. Have you played it?
It's just a tiny bit in the beginning. I'm not a big Souls-like fan, so yeah.
Okay. That's for sure. But it's so different to all the other games in the series, really, totally, and it's just kind of like artistically, because it's a different team, really. So it's just, it gets quite, I don't know, quite effective in places, like with the music and stuff. It's so different from the others in the franchise. I think people tend to hate it.
Really?
Which might make me like it more. I don't know.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. That's super interesting. Maybe we should start a poll like on the podcast and ask like, hey, what's your favorite Dark Souls? I think that's a good thing. And then like get some data from it and like ask you back. Like once we have some data, because I think this is super interesting.
People will definitely say, oh, they're just being contrary, like in the second one the most. That game sucks.
That feels, you know what? Like that kind of reminds me of myself in Forspoken. Everyone hates that game, and I've played that game, and I actually quite like it. So it's super interesting, and I was like, okay, I see the like what could be better in this game, 100%. I actually quite like it, but I also feel like I have like a thing for the underdog, so I'm always gonna, try to to make it like have a chance of fighting and all that kind of stuff. So it's super interesting that you're saying that. But yeah, let's start a poll on that. I think that's super cool. Do you feel like you have a thing for like going outside of what other people think like should be like the right thing or something? I'm asking this like because you just said like, they might be saying this because Dark Souls 2 is not like, the most liked one. So they want to be like on the other side of it. Do you feel like that's a part of your personality?
Maybe. I mean, it might be a bit of contrarianism there. I think I don't often just kind of accept that something is bad without looking at it myself. I think I've quite often will make a snap judgment on something and say I hate it. Like I'll play a game and I'll be like, this is ridiculous. This is stupid. Like the first time I played Deus Ex. What was the one? The game, the one with
Mankind.
There's Mankind Divided. It's the one before that. Oh, I'm so bad with remembering.
Revolution.
Anyway, I played that game and the first night and I hated it and I said this game is stupid. And then I played it again the next day or the day after, and then I went back and said, actually, there is a lot. I was just in the wrong mindset for it at the time, and I think I understand that you have to be in the right mindset for something to hit you a certain way sometimes. And I think about that a lot when I'm playing things. And I think, I don't know, I'm more willing to give things the benefit of the doubt and then see where it goes. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Like you don't go to play, I don't know, a horror game right after you watch like a huge romantic thing and you are like, in a mood for like very touching emotional things, right? Like that might not hit correctly for you, right? So that makes a lot of sense to me. Do you think there's different ways to look at video games? Because it's very easy to get like our visions about games. How do I phrase this correctly? Like it's easy to put ourselves in the perspective of the developer when we're developing and making day-to-day decisions in the studio. But sometimes when we go back to our couch and we're playing our games or on your PC, whatever platform you use, it's quite easy to forget like the hardships that go through it. And sometimes I think like I caught myself thinking about those hardships sometimes. Do you think you think about those hardships when it comes to the time of giving like something a chance? How do you look at it? What is your approach?
Absolutely. I think about the hardship. Like in my position, I have to think about that stuff a lot because a lot of people that are very vocal on the internet don't care about that, which is their right, but they'll make it known that they don't care and they don't think that you've done a good job with something. And we would try to isolate as many developers from that as possible because it's not really constructive. It's not really helpful. But then I see it a lot. Like a lot of stuff comes to me directly. People find ways to contact me about things that they're not happy about. So I think consequently, I do think about that a lot in kind of all the games that I'm playing. I think about it doesn't necessarily like to the point where I'm say, oh, it doesn't. They tried, so you shouldn't say that there's a problem with the game. I don't think that's true, but I do think about that a lot. I do think about that with Dark Souls too. I think about like that's I could see like because that game, the videos that they showed before it came out it looked considerably better than when it came out. I don't know if you remember, it was kind of a controversy at the time. It was about 10 years ago.
Yeah. I think I was in university, actually. So for me, it was, quite a journey. And I remember everyone being super excited about it. And I didn't play Dark Souls 1, so I quite remember people coming and saying, Dark Souls 2 is almost coming out or just came out, and everyone was talking about it next day or something like that. And I was like, what the hell is Dark Souls? But I remember like the whole thing
on it.
Yeah. But then like people, I do remember that feeling of the people that were really liking it versus the people that weren't into it at all. So I do remember that. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and I see, and like we know how that can happen. Like the game looks super good before it came out, but it's like, well, yeah, it's unfortunate. Then reality sets in, and you have to make compromises.
Yeah,
and like Forspoken, like people rips the poop out of that game for some an early dialogue, an early thing that didn't make logical sense.
Yeah,
where she loses the money's there and she won't pick it up, and then it all gets set on fire or whatever. And people are like, "That's so stupid. Why would she do that?" I'm like, I can see so easily. Like I live with a games writer, so we've had conversations about this, like how easily that sort of thing happens in the development of the game.
So easily, right? Even as a producer, I've seen stuff where it's like, we need to make a compromise here. What is the best solution to make sure we still deliver this on time with the constraints we have, like, to still leave the client happy. So sometimes it's not as linear as, right? As a studio director, you probably see a few moments like that, right? So do you feel like things changed for you when you became a studio director in that perspective, in the way you see development?
Yeah, I think it accentuated a bit more because before I was studio director, as technical director, I was still involved in a lot of the discussions, but not quite as much. Yeah, I think I do see. Is it that I see it more? I think now that I'm responsible more for it, then it's not that I get more information than I did before. It's just now I really have to think about it more. I have to dedicate more brain space to it. I can't just be, well, that's someone else's problem. It's so complicated, the relationship when you're making a game for someone else, which most people are. It's like there's so many facets to all that most people are never going to know, and they're never going to understand just how much goes into it, I suppose. Yes,
100%. Do you feel like the brain power and the type of like brain capacity that you need to use from tech direction to studio direction is very different? How does that impact your day?
It's a good question.
Sorry.
There really isn't any. I think it's. I guess it is kind of just what I was saying before. There isn't anything left where it's like that's someone else's problem. In the instances where it's someone else that has to deal with the problem, it's still ultimately your responsibility. So you can't just. Someone else will sort that out. It's like I need someone else to sort this out because I can't. Mm-hmm. So I need to make sure that they are able to sort it out. So it is just a lot more thinking about. Just a lot more.
How to approach things and people, right? And how to have those conversations to make sure everything's on the right person to sort it out. Because it's also not your place to sort most of those problems out. Is to make sure they're getting sorted, I assume.
Well, yeah, that's a big thing that took a lot of time to get used to is stopping trying to fix everything.
Yeah.
And trusting other people to fix things.
Which must be super hard, right?
It's a big change to the way, like when you go from a role where it's like, okay, now I'm the one that has to make this stuff all, fix these problems. Mm-hmm. And then go to the one where it's like, you're more strategic about it and thinking a different sort of... Listening to myself, it sounds so silly, like self-aggrandizing, but it is just sort of a different way of thinking about that. I shouldn't say it's like strategic and all that stuff. It's just different.
It is.
It's just different.
It's just different, exactly. And you're using like completely different cognitive parts of your brain, right? If we really were to dig into it, right, you would be using probably in the studio direction position more abstract thinking and yes, strategic and planning thinking. Whereas like maybe when you're approaching the things like, right, I just need to solve this problem. It's like, what is the problem? How do I solve the problem? And right now it's more like, again, abstract thinking of there's an issue, but there's not a problem that you need to sort directly, right? And probably like that's where your brain starts like all these other things like, how do I sort this? I don't even know what the problem is, right? So how do you discover what the problems are sometimes?
I mean, well, you most of them, people bring the problems to me because I have a good team that's looking out for things. But it's just through absorbing as much as you can of what's going on and looking out for things, I suppose.
Keeping a sharp eye, I assume.
Yeah. Trying to be selective with what you focus on.
Yeah, because, you can take care of everything. But you mentioned something super, super, super cute there, which is that you have an amazing team. I know this is Lab's anniversary month, right? So it's Lab's which anniversary? 9?
9, yes.
Yeah, exactly. How does that feel? For how long are you at Lab42?
Since April the 26th, so I haven't got my badge yet.
Yeah.
In 2015, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, so it's a long time. So you're around pretty much since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Does it feel different from where it started to where it is right now?
Absolutely.
Miles.
Well, yeah, it's completely different. When it first started, like technically it started in January when it was Ed by himself and then Simon.
Just a second. Can you give a bit of context of when Lab42 started, what Lab42 did at the beginning versus like where it is right now?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So it started off a UK subsidiary of an American entertainment company called U42. For a while, it wasn't called Lab42. It was called Kids Studios UK. Kids Studios was sort of branding that they had. They had studios in America.
Mm-hmm.
And it started off really with 4 of us in a basement. There was the studio director, Ed. Well, he wasn't a studio director back then. We didn't use that term. And then Simon. I'm not even sure what his title was back then. And then me as a programmer, and then Chun as an artist. And then it was us. We were, U42 did mobile games, so we started up as a UK studio to make mobile games. So we were working on mobile prototypes and things, and then we worked on to making some games there.
Yeah.
And that's how it started. But then we dropped the mobile stuff after a year and a half, because it was just too difficult a market to crack. And then we moved into importing, and then we kind of grew along those lines. We grew from 4 people to like
how many now?
People. Now it's 76, I think.
Counting. That's amazing.
So it's completely different now. Like it's some people. It's interesting talking to other studio directors and people, operations directors and things, and they say when it gets to around 60 people, then you can't really know who everyone is anymore. And I don't think that's true. I know every single person at Lab42. I know everybody. That's wild to me that there are people that can't keep track of that many people. It's fine. But so I still know everybody, but it is just different, because I think the difference is they don't necessarily all know each other very well.
Yeah, nor have the opportunity to work together, right? When you scale up.
Yeah, when we're across 2 buildings and there's different projects and things. So.
Yeah. Well, it's super, super interesting to see something scale up so much. But just to go back a second then, you were saying you had like 16 folks, and then what happened? You started porting?
Yeah, and then we got to 20-something, and then the pandemic happened. And then, not far into the pandemic, you remember that?
I do. I worked at Lab42. So, I do remember that.
yeah. Like, even before the pandemic, we did a bunch of projects together, right? Or how many have we done by then?
The pandemic?
Yeah. We like, how many things did you ship, do you think, by the time we got to the pandemic?
So I worked on Spite and Malice. It didn't ship, but we were working on Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. I worked on Alien Isolation, and I started working on Human Fall Flat for Stadia, and starting to work afterwards, in a few months afterwards, like freaking next gen. So yeah. It was a ride. It was a lot for me, like in less than a year. So yeah, that was just me. There were other teams there as well. So
it was
crazy.
Really cranking stuff out there with a small team. We were only like 27 at the start of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it wasn't growing super fast. And yeah, you worked on a bunch of things. I think Alien, we were still working on Alien when we all went home. So I remember I had to try and fix the last networking issues in my house.
Yes.
And one of the things was where if you unplug your router, then this thing will happen. Not if you unplug your network card in your computer.
Yeah.
And my bedroom where I was working was at the top of the house, and the router was at the bottom. So I'd have to go down there, unplug it, and then run back up and try and catch the thing happening.
Yeah, I remember that. And I was trying to make builds or do something at home, and you were trying to talk me through it as well whilst you were trying to do that. And you were like, yes, wait a second, I need to go unplug my router and I'll be right back. It was super crazy back then, like navigating all of that. I remember like the announcement. I remember Ed Blinko, the studio director back then, like coming to the studio and saying, right, we need to all go home. This is happening. And like being in a studio when that happens, it feels like you're being a part of history as well in a way. You know what I mean? Because it was a thing that we were all like some of us skeptical about, some of us like scared about, but making that decision to close the studio somewhat early before the government decided to at that time. Like it was a very brave decision, I think. And I think at that point, thankfully, the leadership of the studio, yourself included, like everyone was super supportive. I remember Simon telling me like, you want to go to Portugal? Go to Portugal. I'll find a way. We'll grab you a laptop. We'll find a way. Go and be with your family. So I'll always be grateful for that. And I'm assuming like as a leader of a studio, even in your case, like at that point you were a tech director, I assume that must have been a very weird position to be had and also scary. How was it for you to be in that position at that time? And what kind of challenges do you feel like you had?
So adjusting to everyone being at home, and then for quite a long time, it was difficult, like keeping things ticking along, keeping communication going between people, because we didn't really work from home back then. The only time you could do working from home is if you were doing like a learning day and you were learning something specific, not like doing your normal work from home. So it was just really new for everyone. It was weird. I felt quite fortunate in that I still got to leave my house quite a lot and go to the studio where no one else was, because we didn't have IT. I don't remember, we didn't have an IT department.
We didn't have an IT department. It was Simon going like, you need to do this to encrypt your PC somehow. It was very interesting.
So I'd constantly get dev kits arriving at my house.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to take them to the office and plug them all in the office alone. It was nice to get out of the house, but it was weird that no one else was there.
Yeah.
So and manage all that stuff. And we had to do all the management of the router to let everyone. The router couldn't support everybody working from home at the same time.
Remotely, yes. I was uploading Alien builds at the time, and I needed a lot of network because each build was immensely big. It was 50 gigs or something like that, and we needed to upload that. And I remember like, hey, folks, I don't know what you're doing, but please stop using the studio internet because I need to upload this to Microsoft, which was super interesting. But yeah, it's just very interesting development facts, right, about working from home and adapting.
Yeah, well, we got there, and then we got acquired by Sumo in May 2020. So it'll be our fourth year anniversary next month.
Yeah. Do you feel like being acquired by such a big group affected the operations of the studio? Did that also impact Lab's growth and the continuous growth of the company?
Yes, because it allowed us to invest in our own studio. Because being part of U42, it was a challenge to be able to use, because we were doing well as a studio, but it was like we're part of this organization where it wasn't like there was a huge amount of money in the organization as a whole. So we didn't have great PCs, for example. We had to get like the desks we got like cast off desks from other game studios and stuff, just because we didn't have the money to spend. But then being part of Sumo, then we were allowed to invest in basic things like infrastructure and machines. And dev kits and making sure everyone has the right chair and all that sort of stuff. So it was good. And then we could grow a bit more quickly because we had the organization behind us to support that. So all of a sudden we had a HR department and a finance department and a recruitment department and everything, IT department.
Yeah.
So it was a big change. And then we were able to grow as hard as it was doing it all remotely.
Mm-hmm.
We switched into doing interviews and talking to gamer camp people and things like that.
Yeah.
All from home. It was very different.
Yeah, definitely. I was part of some of those interviews and stuff. I think that was around when I started interviewing staff as well. And it changes the whole dynamic, doesn't it? I remember doing interviews just before the pandemic to a couple of producers, which stayed at Lab42, Richard and Christina. They're still there. So shout out to those guys. And I remember like doing interviews like a year later with all of us at home, right? To the next round of Gamer Campers. Gamer Camp, just for context, is a master's degree in Birmingham City University here in the UK, where they do pretty much a master's course based on a studio environment. They simulate a studio environment with people from all disciplines, code, art, production, design. And they try to simulate, and then they bring people from companies to see the work and interview and all that kind of stuff, right? So, yeah, I remember like interviewing people a year afterwards, and it was just such a different mood, right? How do I gauge these people? Like, because there's an element to it that is your energy that you only really, really feel when you're with someone, right? And it's way harder to put it over a screen or just over a microphone. So, yeah, how was that for you? You are also like an introvert person. Do you feel like that affected you in the way you work?
Yeah, it was exhausting. Like when I'd have to interview like all day, it would be all day, whether it was gamer camp or just candidates. And I'd be doing it literally all day, and it would just completely wipe me out in a way that wouldn't have done if I could do it in person. So I don't know if it is an introvert extra. I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, I think it's when I'm doing something that is not completely comfortable and known to me, then it takes a lot of effort and it does really wipe me out. So it was quite hard to do that stuff. Talking to people that I know really well is totally fine. Like that's fine. But yeah, it was hard.
I feel the same way, by the way. I think it's very easy for me to talk to people that I already know. If I don't know people, like I feel like it requires an extra layer of energy to put myself out there and do it. So sometimes like the anxiety is real before starting conversations. I know for the people that know me personally, it might not feel that way, but internally, it definitely feels that way, which is super interesting that you raised. But have you ever done a personality test, like the 16 personalities kind of thing and all that?
Yes, I have, but I don't know if I trust it in the sense that I don't know if I trust my own answers for those things. I'm like, is this really me, or am I just saying this? Is this what I want to be my answer? Or is it my actual answer? So I don't...
That's super cool. But don't you think... No, you are. Don't say that. But don't you think the tests are made having that in consideration? I think they are.
Yeah, but if you ask me what I got, I would not remember.
Okay. Well, that's super interesting. No, because the letters kind of say if you are introvert, extrovert, all of that, right? And I'm asking that because I'm an extrovert, but I'm not an extrovert with a high level. And apparently, for those of you listening to us out there, my personality type, the campaigners, is the more introverted of the extroverted. We're the ones that start the things so that the others can go and like make it flourish. But that doesn't mean that we are the ones that are always like, yeah, the most actually extroverted things. We like to get things rolling so that people can actually do it. But it's actually very like, I'm good at empowering people around me, but not so much when it is for myself, which is super interesting.
Oh, that is interesting about you.
Yeah. But I think it's cool because it helps us like think about all the things about ourselves. Like you were questioning the fact that, are this really my answers? Do I really want to believe in it? But I think like giving it a chance and reading through might prove yourself wrong or not. Yeah. I don't know.
You might be right.
Do you think like you use any personality things when you're thinking about the people that you're going to make work as a team in the workplace, or it's just like a match in terms of like their skill sets and all that kind of stuff? Do you have their personality into consideration sometimes?
Oh, you have to. I think you have to. I think it's probably one of the first things to go when it's not an ideal world. But I think you do have to try and think about that. Think about the way, and not in the sense that this person is toxic or bad or anything. It's just some people just work together
better. There's synergies, right? And there's things that don't balance each other in any way. Yeah. And I assume, especially like when working on a bigger eye level studio kind of position, like that should come into play a lot. Not from like a malicious point of view, but from how can I facilitate the work the best that I can for the people around me to make sure we're still delivering and able to have our contracts fulfilled somehow, right?
Mm.
So yeah.
But it's hard because that is a thing that's maybe you don't take into consideration as much when you are like interviewing and hiring people. It's like what personality am I looking for in this role? You can't really think that. You can't discount someone because you think, oh no, but we're missing more of this sort of personality. So they can do all of the technical stuff, but we don't want to hire.
That's super interesting because when I was helping with interviews, I always came from that angle of like, is this the person that we need in our team? Is this like a match that's going to add to our culture at Lab42 somehow? So that's super interesting to hear because...
Well, don't take it to mean that I think that they wouldn't add to the culture. Like, that's not what I'm saying. That's definitely a thing that is an important part of, like, we try not to hire anyone that we don't think is going to detract from that sort of feeling that we convey, because we have all the values though as a studio that we want to uphold, so we don't want to. But just in terms of just
you can be biased.
A programmer archetype. Let's say that you can't discount someone because they don't fit the archetype. You might think that you have less of it.
Yes, 100%. Which is also part of creating multidisciplinary teams, right? Sometimes there might be people that are so different with so many different personalities at play, right? How do you try to balance it out when you're putting a team together?
Oh, that's a really good question. Oh, I don't know if there's any special sort of thing to it. It's just exactly what you're saying. You just have to be mindful of that. You have to think about the interplay between the people, but try and make the most compatible team you can. But as I was saying before, it's like there are so many situations where you can't necessarily put together the 100% best team. You just have to put together the best team with the people you've got, because everyone's a nice person, everyone's a capable person.
Do you believe you can train anyone to be the best professional they can, even though they come from a different industry or a different background?
Train them to be the best professional they can be. That's depends what you mean by professional.
Get someone to your team with the potential of growth, like even if they don't have the full list of expectations you would have when you hire them, when you're trying to hire them through the door.
Yes, up to a point of where they want to put in the effort for it. I think I see what you're saying. Like, no matter what their background is, can you give them the training to be able to get to where they want to go?
Yes.
With enough time and enough... that's tricky, because you have to account for the opportunities that arise, because training with a lot of aspects of things you need to be put in situations where you can put things into practice. So with that, a lot of that is waiting for the right opportunity, or trying to engineer the right opportunities, I suppose. As a studio, you've got to factor that into the opportunities that you're going after, just like anything else. If you have if your studio wants to work towards doing a certain type of project, whether that's for the growth of the team or for the growth of the portfolio of the studio or anything, it's part of those factors in deciding which projects you prioritize trying to win. So on a long enough timeline, yes.
Yeah.
But that could be a long time. So it's tough.
Yeah, I imagine it must be. Do you believe there is a gap between the industry and the people that want to be in the industry? And do you feel like there's something our industry can do to, support more of the gap between, let's say, like the academic students that want to get into the industry or people that are changing careers somehow, even within the games industry? What do you think about that?
So we've hired people that have had more academic backgrounds. I think if they have an aptitude for the field that they're in, then they can learn the knowledge. if they have a work ethic, if they have the drive to learn things, then they can learn the things that they need for the job. It doesn't matter that much if they don't already have that.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. And I think this question is super directed. Like, there's a lot of students out there that don't believe they'll nail a job or that they will have ever an opportunity. So what do you have to say to those people out there?
If you want to get into making games, an important thing that I look for, if someone doesn't have professional experience already in making games, is that they have a real interest in making games. I think the places where students that are applying for roles fall down that I've seen, and I've seen it a lot, is that they're doing a subject that's a programmer or an artist that's not doing something games related or in their studies, but then they also don't have anything to show that they've even wanted to try and understand what it takes to be in the industry.
Yeah,
I don't believe that people need an applicable degree or anything like that to get a job in the games industry. I just think people have to show that they want to do it.
Yeah, somehow demonstrate it, right? Before they knock on the door and go like, I think you should hire me.
Yeah, which happens a lot.
Yes, I assume so. How is it to be on that side? Because it also must be hard, right? I'm assuming, like, of course, there's a lot of people that want a job and are there like, hey, I really want to join the games industry because it's cool or whatever. But it also must be hard to say the no's on the other side. So how do you prepare yourself for that?
Oh, that's interesting because I don't. When I was looking at that, I don't really look at many CVs now. Just because we've got the departments take care of themselves. But when I would get CVs, I would always want to give feedback, whether it was a yes or a no. I would always want to say, like, have you done anything with games? And say, okay, well, I would suggest that you go and do something and see if you actually like it and then apply again. So I don't like it when feedback isn't given that is direct and clear, because then people aren't going to know what they've done wrong. They might genuinely they might have even done some game stuff. They've just not thought to put it on their CV.
Yeah.
So I really hate it when I see people being dismissive of someone's experience because they look at it and they go, doesn't apply. Chuck it in the bin.
Yeah, I agree. So do you think feedback is a big part of career progression and career opportunities and how people take it?
Yes, but it's a really difficult one. Like I absolutely think it is, but I think there is a I don't think it's inherent in everybody to be able to give good feedback or receive feedback. I think that's something that does take some training and thinking about for people. I think giving good feedback is a difficult thing, really. It's not super simple.
It's not as linear as like, you did this good and maybe we can improve there, especially when there's feelings at play, right? So how do we deal with hard situations in that context? Because it must be hard. Or do you have anything that you do at Lab42 or any training that you get your people through to make sure like things are more smoothly on a day-to-day basis?
So we do have, for anyone that's in any sort of people management position, there is a whole suite of training that they go through Lab42 and Sumo around things like giving feedback, having difficult conversations, and things like that. It's like focusing on being mindful of people's emotions, but not basing feedback on emotions. Base it on something practical that can be worked on and things like that. What's difficult is there's no training for receiving feedback. Which, I guess that's a thing that we deal with on a more ad hoc basis. Like if someone doesn't take some constructive feedback well, then we have to manage that at the time. So.
Yeah, and maybe try to work it into like some of the daily practices or something like that. Do you feel like you do that sometimes?
Yes. I mean, it should be happening on a daily basis. I think that the hardest thing for people to get over is the instinct to protect other people.
Oh, that's super hard. Yeah.
That's where it's the most difficult, is because they don't want people to feel bad.
Yeah.
So then they don't tell them that they might have done something wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
that's complicated, because then you can't evolve, can you? But that's also a sign that you surrounded yourself with good people. So I guess there's something there, right? You're surrounded by good people. That's your problem. Okay, talking about that, and I don't know if you're comfortable talking a bit about being part of the LGBT family. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so the games industry as an overall has a bit of mixed responses to how they support the LGBTQ plus community. And there's a few communities around the industry that are very safe and open and friendly, and there's others that aren't as much. From your experience as an LGBTQ plus person, do you feel there's support inside of the Sumo group and in Lab42? And do you think that it affected your career development in any way?
Do I think it affected my career development? Let's start with that because it was the last thing, so it stuck in my brain. I don't think so. I never felt like it did at Lab42 and then at Sumo. I think, like you were saying before, we were just surrounded by good people. So there's people at worst confusion, right? Mm-hmm. No malice or unacceptance or anything like that. Just a bit of confusion and needed, but being open to being educated about things. Mm-hmm. And that extends to Sumo as well. I think Sumo does quite a lot of trying to make people aware of various things and trying to be supportive. They just Sumo just got together its own transitioning in the workplace guidance that they've now put out, and there's a whole lot of training that's going on for people to educate people on trans awareness and things like that. And there's a lot of will within the organization to educate people and help people understand. So I've never felt anything but acceptance at Sumo and Lab42.
That's so good. That's great to hear. Yeah. Did you ever felt any kind of discrimination towards yourself in the video games industry directly?
No, I don't think so. I think, but being realistic about that, there's probably, a lot of that is just going to be coming from the background, I'll say, of being a particularly privileged one. Then it's, then I think I just got it a bit easier.
Aww.
A lot easier than a lot of people. So.
Well, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
That's very good. That's very good. Do you have any words for anyone that is questioning in any way their gender identity, transitioning, and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, man. Yeah. Think about it a lot. Don't stop yourself thinking about it. Question it. Look into what it means for you. Experiment with stuff as much as you can, as much as you feel comfortable to do it. Experiment with stuff to figure out what it means for you. And don't wait.
Yeah.
Don't wait. Don't suppress it or try and ignore it.
Just go for it.
Think about it and go for it. Yeah. I would hope that you have supportive people in your life that you can talk to about it. If you do, then talk to them about it. They'll be receptive to it. And, don't keep it to yourself if you don't have to.
Yeah. Right. So support yourself and the people around you to make flourish whatever doubt you have inside of you. That's beautifully put. Thank you, Terry. Do you have anything that you think needs changing in the video games industry from your perspective?
Yeah. A lot needs to be done to, despite what people on the internet might be saying lately, more needs to be done to support diversity in all forms in the games industry. It's still a predominantly white male industry, cis white male.
Yes.
And it's a really tough thing to change, but if there's no will to change and there's no way to change it, and it's frustrating sometimes that people just go there's gender pay gap just because we don't have that many women in senior roles or whatever. So okay, well then don't bother doing anything about it. Is that what you're saying? Don't do anything. No, you do take the steps to try and improve it. And I think that there should be a lot more improvement there.
Do you feel like some people are also getting pushed up the ranks to try to balance some of those things? I'm not saying in Sumo particularly or Lab42, but do you think that's one of the practices that is being done in the games industry?
I haven't seen it, but I wouldn't be surprised if that did happen. I could see why someone might see that as a shortcut to doing it. It's really tough though, because let's talk about the gender pay gap specifically. But there is that is usually because it's not because there aren't women in an organization, although there's usually not that many in a lot of places. Even at Lab42, honestly, we don't have a lot of women, and we spend a lot of time looking at biases to, see if it is bias or what's causing it. And we put a lot of effort into trying to attract more women to the organization, but we still don't have a lot there. but then it's really, there's not a lot of women in senior positions, in development positions in the organization. I can see how it could be tempting to boost people up before they're ready, but then that could be very difficult for them, and people, especially them.
Yeah, because then it might increase the pressure, and like we might not be able, like as an organization, to give them the preparation and the support they need, like to deal with so many things, like as you said for yourself, like this changing from a tech director to a studio director, like it changes your mindset. So it must be complicated to make sure you have the support in place to support these people, right? Because it's not just about promoting people, it's about setting them up for success, right? Yeah, and how do we do that? Is that a challenge that you face as well?
Yeah, yes. It is. And it's one that I'm very much conscious of all the time, because I think about my own, like, I spend a lot of time checking myself about stuff, because I think in my case, I got to where I am because I had people that really believed in me and did push me up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I managed it. So I want to think, like, am I taking away other people's opportunities to succeed by taking a big leap?
Yeah.
And I got this, I don't want to just be like, well, I did it, but you can't do it. Like, I got to think about that. It's like, I got to think about it on an individual basis and try and do right by everybody. And it is something I think about a lot.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that everybody is recognized for what they do and can do.
Mm-hmm.
appropriately, and then give them the opportunities to grow in that, not just skip things to try
and fly, right? It's about growing. It's not about being in a position and having a certain name. It's more about, are we giving you the steps so that you can get there, and how do we support this development? Which leads me to my next question. How are you assessing your biases on, I don't know, being a studio director and dealing with so many different people, and even touching on what we just said? How do you assess your biases? It must be hard, right? Because you need to constantly shift your mindset, or no?
It is hard, but it is a mindset, and I think it's not. It does take effort to get there. I think it's kind of emblematic that sometimes when you're running a studio, you make certain decisions, and then people make assumptions about the decisions that you've made and thought, well, did you even think about this? It's like, yes, I did think about that. So I do spend a lot of time thinking about it, and I encourage the people that work with me to think about that as well. We do have training specifically on unconscious bias in the organization as well, which is good. And the training is good, but it's like a couple of hours of training. It's not going to change the way you think about stuff. Within 2 hours of listening to someone tell you why it's bad to not think about stuff. You know what you should do? You should think more about things.
Okay, I'll go now. Hopefully you plant the seed.
I think the way to change that is to really to get people to think about, like, what's leading to those decisions, maybe what, like, truly why it is better for everybody to think about those biases and, like, assess them, and don't just take for granted your first thought, because your first thought is just like an instinct or whatever, and then your second thought is when you've actually thought it through. Don't just go from the first thought. That's I don't know, that might lead to a disaster or something. So don't. Have you seen, like, anything changing or anyone questioning things after they had that training or something? What, questioning their own?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. There are some people at the studio that have always been very well-meaning people, but over the past few years of having conversations with them about things and having these sorts of trainings and stuff, it is nice to see people that start to be more quickly receptive to when you might point out, maybe not that, and then they quicker to think it through and really internalize it and make changes than they would have been before. So I have seen that sort of growth, which is very nice.
Oh, that's super cool. Do you feel like the way, like, you're handling things as well is supporting that change?
I hope so.
You hope so?
I don't want to. I don't want it to sound like I think that I've got it all figured out and know exactly what I'm doing.
Do you know someone like that? Because if you know, Jesus, like, they should have like ascended or something, because I say that every day. Like there's days where I wake up and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm a failure, and I question everything in my life. So
oh, absolutely.
So there's days like that, like for everyone, right? I think all of us have that. Do you feel like you still have those every now and then? Because I don't. Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that does serve people well, but that ain't how my brain works. I replay things constantly in my mind, constantly thinking about stuff. Was that the right choice? Like going over back and thinking about it and reassessing. And that's just how my brain works. I mean, that leads to a lot of things like anxiety. But I think it's, I don't know. I don't know what it'd be like to not
be anxious.
No, I'm saying second guess yourself. Or maybe it's good not to second guess yourself. Sometimes it is tough to you know. Sometimes you've got to stick to your convictions and stick to your what you're going for. But when it comes to things like the sorts of things we've been talking about, you've got to be introspective.
100%. Do you have any tips for anyone that wants to be a studio director one day?
I don't know. I didn't want to be a studio director.
How did you end up there? Tell us about it.
Well, I always thought, no, I could never do that because I couldn't keep all of that stuff in my mind at once. I didn't think that I had the right personality for it because I didn't think that I was outgoing enough. I didn't think that I would be able to be tough enough in like contract negotiations or dealing with business partners in a way where they're trying to take advantage of you or something. I was like, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
It was only really I ended up in this position just because, I mean, to me it was by accident, but to someone else it was clearly calculated.
Yeah.
So that when Ed, the previous studio director, he was like trying to train me over a couple of years into the position of being a studio director.
Without you knowing.
Yeah, I didn't really know. And then
Ed, the master of the papers. Oh my God. Ed, the master of puppets.
I mean, and eventually when he told me, I was like, oh, well, okay, I guess, that's scary, but I'll keep working on that. And then it was only a couple of months later when he was like, so I'm out. You want to?
Such an Ed thing. Oh, yeah. You're ready. Off you go.
and he told me, you're going to smash it. You're going to be great. Very empathetic. You know what you're doing. You know how to make games. You come from a development background, which he did. I mean, he was a programmer a long time ago, but he's been kind of in management and production sort of things and marketing and things for a long time. So he was like, you know what you're doing. You'll be fine. So I don't know. And it's hard because I've only been a studio director of a place with 70 people or whatever, which is very different. Like if you were starting off as a studio director of like 4 people.
Yeah.
God, that sounds so easy.
Sounds amazing, right? You probably would have to wear a lot of hats though, and you wouldn't have like all the team, right, to support you.
You are absolutely right. Yes. You wouldn't have people to do a lot of the things that I have people to do.
Do you think you would be still happy in being a studio director of a team with 4 people?
Yes.
What would change on your day-to-day?
I'd probably get more directly involved with
the game. Yeah. How does that make you feel?
Like,
Tough question.
Sad.
Aww. Do you ever feel like you're too far away from development? Or do you feel like your development days are over?
No, I don't think I'm too far away from development because I still do I'm still very heavily involved in all the pitching, which involves looking very closely at the projects and getting everything together with all the evaluations and people, like the technical stuff and the art stuff, and having all those conversations and still see how all the projects are going and things. I don't think so. I think honestly, other people might perceive that I'm far away, which is something that I'm trying to work on. I think there might be a perception within the studio that I'm not that connected to the development anymore. I need to try and be more visible about that, I suppose, because I do pay a lot of attention to things. It's more people telling me how things are going and then make decisions on what to do.
Yeah. And maybe a lot of people don't see you as much, right? You're like this invisible presence that everyone knows but no one sees.
Well, in the new studio that we're getting, eventually.
Yeah.
The management room is like it's like a fishbowl, so everyone will be able to see me all the time.
Hopefully they feel like you're present and making, oh, there's Terry. They exist. Maybe that's more it than the other way around,
Yeah.
Because clearly you're always making decisions based on these people, but because they don't see it, they don't they don't think about it, but you are always thinking about them.
Yeah.
Sounds like an imbalanced relationship right there. But yeah, we won't tell anyone, just the listeners of our podcast.
No, it's like I appreciate that everyone has their own individual points of view and experiences, and it's fine. It's like I have to understand that I can't control the way everybody else thinks about me.
Mm-hmm.
That's for them.
Maybe part of the learning as well, right? So yeah. So you already said you didn't think of being a studio director. It's something that kind of happened to you. But what would be your dream game and dream position to work on? Do you see yourself going back to tech? Do you not see that anymore? Do you think Lab42 is your dream right now? How do you feel about that?
No, I love my job now. I love being a studio director. I love being able to see how things are going across all the projects. No, I really love it. I wouldn't want to change it because I love pitching on things. And I love doing the business development things and like trying to get projects off the ground and all of that sort of stuff. And like the excitement that people have when we talk about a new project that we've got, or we get to work on this IP or something. I'm really excited by it. And I love contributing to the studio in that way of making those things happen, as difficult as it is.
It sounds super, super difficult, but it also seems like you're being a great studio director and thinking all of those things and taking care of your team, I would say. But yeah.
That's right.
Oh. Do you think it was always a dream of yours to work in video games?
Always a dream? Well, no, because I was kind of a stupid child that didn't really think about the fact that, like, I used to make a lot of mods and things like that. I didn't really think about the fact that you could just go and work in games. I was like, well, some people do it and that's cool for them, but I guess I'll go and get a job doing whatever.
Yeah. So it didn't connect. It didn't connect for you somehow. Do you think that's due to the lack of representation and all that kind of stuff?
I think it's much more immediately obvious to people nowadays, I guess. Before the internet was like the internet is now with social media and all that sort of stuff, and being able to see into the world of making games is so comparatively easy now, and it wasn't back then in the 90s.
Yeah.
It's like you either knew people that made games and you knew what went into it, or you just didn't.
Yeah, 100%. Do you feel like we could be connecting more as game developers to like the people out there and doing more efforts to show more of this other side of development?
Yeah, I think you could always be doing more to do that. It's like, I wonder where the line is of like what people would want to see, though. I think, let's think about this a bit more. I would love for more people to be more educated about what it takes to make a game from every angle.
I understand
people have their own ideas about that.
That's super interesting that you're mentioning that. One of the things that I started doing since I quit Lab42 is I'm actually an invited professor in the university back in Portugal. And it's one of the things that I'm doing to kind of give back to my community, because that was the university where my career in games started, right? Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting to go back to that place like 10 years after and see students from a new generation trying to pursue that dream in games. And it's also very interesting to come from a perspective of someone that actually worked in the industry and still works and is connected to the industry, and like put some questions on the table on their preconceived ideas about games. And like, sometimes it's hard for them to make the difference between what is it to be a gamer and what it is to be a games developer, because they are still forming that kind of identity. What is my identity as a gamer versus what is my identity as a developer? Do you feel like you still have any of that within the studio or even within yourself? Any thoughts on that?
I think I do, but because I think I love all the games that we make at Lab42. I think we wouldn't do them if I didn't think they were cool projects. But they're not all games that are for me as a gamer. And like the things that interest me in games is quite far removed from the things that interest me in my game development life. like I play completely different sorts of games than what we work on generally.
Yeah.
So they feel like quite different things to me. They feel like quite separate. Like when I'm playing games, I don't think about how games are made. I used to, like earlier in my career, I spend a lot of time
thinking about it,
thinking about how it was made and stuff. And I don't do that now. I feel like they're more separate.
Yeah.
I don't know. That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because I started in multimedia. I remember on my first years when I started to learning about coding and all that kind of stuff and, how to make camera positioning and all that. I remember watching movies and video games and being like, oh, this is that camera angle, or like, oh, this bug is probably this problem, or all that kind of stuff, And nowadays I can enjoy it again as a player, but I think it took a lot of time to make that separation and a conscious effort of this is not work. This is something I actually like to do besides my work. It just happens to be in the same industry, from the same industry. But yeah. Do you think like it's hard to turn off sometimes though?
Turn off my game development brain or just work in general?
Game development brain and then work.
Game development brain, no, I don't really find it that hard to turn it off. Just general work stuff, because most of my job is admin. It's not. It's things that have no clear end. So it is hard to turn off and not just be working all hours. It's like the thing about my job as a studio director that was quite different from any of my previous roles is that I will never run out of things to do. I will never be at a point where I have to go to someone and say, I've got nothing to do.
Yeah.
Right? So when it comes to the end of a day or the end of a week or whatever, there are things that I have not accomplished that I want to get to always, forever.
Yeah.
And it will never be an empty list. So.
Well, that's good. I think that would make my brain happy. One of the things that I hate the most is like ending a day and feeling like, oh, I had to be doing busy work. It's like, so there is projects like that, or there were projects like that in my career. And honestly, I don't want to be in that position again because for my brain, it's so terrifying. It's worse because I'm like you. I suffer from anxiety and I just go like, what am I going to do now?
Oh, wow.
I'm not proving myself enough. Or do I need to do something else?
Yeah.
So do you feel like that's something that you might deal with any of your staff or something like that at Lab? Did you ever had to deal with a situation like that directly?
Yes, a lot. Yeah, well, a lot of people do think of it exactly that sort of way, like that people want to be busy, and it's really difficult for them when they're not busy with something that is meaningful. And that is one of the hardest things to deal with, honestly. Like, because it's not. Sometimes a project ends and another one begins immediately. Sometimes that presents its own stresses. Sometimes it can be a month, or whatever in the meantime, and it can be hard to fill that void, giving people meaningful things to do. It's meaningful for them. It's meaningful for the studio.
Yeah,
I mean, there are ways to do it, but it's a lot of effort
and preparation, I assume,
yes.
and admin and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And when we're dealing with day-to-day, it makes it harder, I assume. Well, this is a tough one, but I really want to ask it. So the question is, with the current situation of the economy as an overall and a lot of layoffs that are happening in the games industry, how are you catering to the needs of Lab42 and making sure your staff feels happy and secure? Because you haven't been affected yet, or you haven't been affected, period. So how do you keep your staff secure? Because they might get more nervous, even though it's not the situation of the company. And I assume like some people just get anxious, as we were telling, right? Both of us have that anxious voice in the back of our minds. How do you cater to the needs of your staff in that sense? How do you reassure them?
Yeah, that is something that I think about all the time because I try to remind people about the things that are going well for the studio. And so like I try to remind people that we've got these projects and we've got this coming in and whatever, we've got the backing of Sumo and Tencent and everything's secure. And I do tell people that, but I think that some people, again, rightly probably think, yeah, but they would say that, wouldn't they? They wouldn't want me to get worried about imminent layoffs or anything. And that's fine. That's their right. Like they don't, I could see why I could see myself thinking that in the same position. No, I'm far too trusting, actually. I would just believe whatever anybody says. So we I do try and remind people about the situation they're in. It's like there have been, like you said, there have been no layoffs at Sumo at all, and there are none planned, just because of the way that they do business means that they balance their risks really well, Sumo, so that we're in a good position. So Lab42 has never, especially since being part of Sumo, never been in a position where we're really at risk.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like that's an ongoing thing. I don't think I've solved it.
Yeah.
I don't think I have solved I don't know if I can solve it, but I will try. Of like trying to make people feel at ease about their own personal situation when it comes to layoffs in the industry. Because just saying, don't worry, telling people to not worry.
Yeah, go home. It's fine. Doesn't work. But yeah, do you think they're gonna listen to this? Hopefully they will, and they'll think like, oh, after all, Terry's saying this online, so it's true now.
Well, I'm not going to come on your podcast and say actually, so I'll tell them all that, but it's all a big.
Yeah, it's all like no, it's just for a podcast. Well, I assume not. Well, weird question, and one of the last ones. Okay, so what would you say to 11-year-old Terry and how far they got with their life?
What would I say? I wouldn't want to say anything. It wouldn't want to freak me out. Oh, you're going to be running a video game studio with 76 people. What?
Oh my god!
What I would, if I could, this might not be what you're asking, but if I could, I would say you're going to get to work with Sega. You're going to work on Sonic games, and you're going to get to talk to people at Sega about all their IP and things like that. You're going to get to work with Call of Duty, although Call of Duty hadn't been invented by the time I was 11, so I'd be very confused about that.
There's going to be like a shooter out there. There's going to be the most played shooter in the world. You're going to talk to people about that and make people work on it in your team, like kind of thing, right?
But that's the coolest thing to me, all the different sorts of games we get to work on.
Yeah.
Super cool games.
On which games have you worked? Because you asked me this earlier, and I said that like on those 6 months before the pandemic, but what about you? On how many titles have you worked? Do you know them all? I know you have a wall, right?
I do. I stopped at a wall space. So I stopped. I think the last thing I put on there was maybe Team Sonic Racing or something, and that was in the pandemic.
Yeah.
So there's aliens up there though.
Yay!
I don't know how many. A lot. Most of them at Lab42. Before I came to Lab42, most of the things I worked on ended up getting cancelled before they came out. There's a warehouse somewhere full of, well, probably not now, they've trashed them, full of like Wii games and DS games that I worked on that were all manufactured, they just didn't come out. So.
Oh, that's so sad. But well, you did work on a lot of things then.
Yes. Well, yeah, I don't know, dozens.
It's just a lot. Look at me, so many, it's dozens. I don't even know.
Well, I say worked on, like, I mean, actually, like, if we talk about as a programmer contributing code, I mean, still probably a couple of dozen, but...
flexing that couple of dozen right there.
But Inês, I just turned 40 last week. Okay.
Okay.
I'm old. I've been on this earth a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you are doing a talk and develop Brighton pretty soon, right? What can people expect from that?
Practical advice on how to support your neurodivergent people in your studio. Real like practical things that you can do, not just like vague things.
Yeah. Is that a big thing for you and a big worry for you as a studio director?
Is it a worry? I wouldn't say, well, is it a worry? I don't know how to... I mean... I see what you're getting at. Is it something that is important?
That you think about that is important to you? Yes.
Yeah. That's why this talk is going to go into things you can do at like across the scale of things you can do. So it could be like something, making sure that if people that have noise sensitivity can get like noise cancelling headphones, like that's at the bottom end, up to the other end of like, if you're designing a new studio, think about this and think about the different ways that people work that don't do this because it's like it's not conducive to those sorts of the sorts of environments where people with certain sensitivities or something will be able to thrive. So it's like across the scale of things. It is something I think about a lot because until fairly recently, people didn't really think about it much across the board of the studio, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this is something that you brought like as a worry when you came into a studio direction role?
It was something that I was thinking about before then, when I was technical director and started to, when I became technical director, it really just let me kind of be like, just find ways to improve the code department, find ways to just do things better. And that's where I started to look into how we could support people better and see and listen to everyone, spend a lot of time talking to everyone, hearing what their problems are, and then starting to go, there's this and this and this. They're not necessarily saying, I need this. What they're saying is, this is a problem I have. And then trying to think about ways that we can help with that.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about it for a while.
Yeah, it probably is a lot to balance, like in terms of neurodivergency is a spectrum, right? So how do we support all of those things, as you were saying, versus like people that do not identify with being in the spectrum, and how to balance it all out, not only in your team composition, but also in the places people see in the studios and stuff. Is there anything that you do more than the noise canceling things that you would like to share?
So I should say, you said I'm giving a talk. I'm giving a talk with
Cindy
Archer.
Yeah.
Office manager, who is our neurodiversity champion at the studio. So she has set up a thing called the Neurodiversity Network, where we meet regularly as a group of people that you don't have to be neurodivergent to join it. You don't have to do that, but there's people that have ADHD, OCD, things like that join the group, and we all get together on a monthly basis, I think, and we just talk about things that are going on and try and look for ways that we can improve our processes. That could be working processes day to day, or it could be accommodations or something like that, or making adjustments to the studio where we can and things like that. It could be like, trying to think of examples, thinking about productivity things we can bring in to support people, like people with ADHD, like they find it difficult to remember to do certain things. So what sort of things can we do to support them with working in a slightly different way to support that? I'm finding it really hard to think of practical examples of something like
it's okay.
I'll all be in the talk.
Yeah, it was all being to talk. So don't forget, folks, to be there at Develop Brighton in July, right? It's at 13th and 14th, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Develop Brighton. So yeah, well, you can see Terry there. But other than that, how can people find you, Terry?
Don't find me.
No, don't find Terry. Just don't find. Just don't find him.
I'm really basic. My on all the socials or whatever, I'm just my name. Even my PlayStation Network ID is just Terry Goodwin.
I'm not sure if you want to share that part, unless you want to have a lot of developers and enthusiasts of game development. But yeah,
I think I have all that turned off anyway. So
it's fine. It's fine then. It's okay then. But yes, okay. I know you do have a YouTube channel. Do you want to share that here or no?
Sure. It's not. I mean, it might be interesting to you. It's doing fairly well. We've just passed 3 million views or something.
Whoa! Look at you go.
But it's just gameplay. It's just videos of me playing games. No commentary, no nothing.
Yeah. Well, it's good, isn't it? Do you enjoy doing them? Do you think like it's a part of you that is not completely explored? Maybe one day you will be Terry the YouTuber?
So I've actually stripped it back a bit over the past couple of years, because I realized it was becoming a problem.
Yeah. Okay.
I just, as you said at the very top of this, you said you're someone that gets obsessed with things. Yes, I got obsessed with everything I played. I had to record it, and then I had to edit it, and then I had to put it on YouTube. Absolutely everything I played, which meant that I had to play it in a way that I could record it.
Oh
which
my
meant
God.
It either had to be on the PS4 or on the PlayStation, ideally, or something where I'd have access to my capture device. I used to take a capture device to work, so that when I played games at lunchtime, I could plug it in and then get it on the USB, and then I'd edit it when I got home. And I was like, you just need to chill out. Playing games isn't fun anymore. It's like it's a job. So then I haven't done it much, but I need to get back to doing it because it's fun.
Hopefully not on that level, like in the level that is helpful for you or healthy for you. That's all I wish to you.
Now I just keep a spreadsheet of every game that I've beaten, and I've got all sorts of stats and graphs and
oh my
pie
God.
charts.
Well, if it makes you happy, I remember like I used to share an apartment with someone that still works at Lab42 actually as well. And as you know, I'm also a trophy hunter, and sometimes I do print the guides and everything to make sure like I tick the things, like because it's easier for me. I have ADHD, and if it is on the screen, it's way harder for me. So I have this necessity of actually touching things and highlighting and making a lot of stuff to them. So it's very, very funny. And I remember like I had this beautiful table with all the cards that you can get on The Witcher. And like I was marking them off one by one. I think it's more than 50 cards. I'm not sure. And Juan was always laughing at my list. So I do understand you. And
What's funny about that?
I don't understand what's the problem here. Like, it's completely healthy. I love it. I'm an adult and I know what I'm doing and I like to do this. Yeah, it's just funny. So, do you have anything else you would like to share before we close off? Just giving you a space to talk.
Nice talking to you. That's all. It's just nice to say hello and chat about things. Yeah,
it's super nice. No, thank you for coming to the podcast. In the meanwhile, thank you so much for your time, Terry, and see you on the next one. All right. And that was my interview with Terry Goodwin. As I said in the beginning, this was a great interview to have, and I loved the whole process of having someone else to talk to in this episode. Also, we are thinking about a different format for other episodes where I do hear your stories and comment on it. They might be from a developer's perspective, a gamer's perspective, or an enthusiast, designer, or researcher. So do send me your emails with any questions you might have or stories so that we can comment. I think on those episodes, I might ask my producer to come with me so that we have someone to talk to and make this more fun in a way. But yeah, I'll be waiting on those. So thank you so much for staying with us till the end. If you like this episode, please follow us for more. For extra content, please check out our Patreon or visit our store for some goodies. They will be both linked in today's episode description. Yes, goodies. So on the store, on my personal website, I have like a section for a pixel at a time. And there we have some socks, some tote bags. We also have some t-shirts and hoodies. So go and give it a look. And if you like something, that's a nice way to support this podcast to keep going and maybe, just maybe, continue to expand and have a better quality. So do check it out. There's some mugs as well for your morning coffee. So yeah, that would be amazing. If you have a burning question or you like to suggest a discussing topic, please send us your Q&A and audios via email to apixelatatime.podcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And don't forget, do take it a pixel at a time. Goodbye. This episode was hosted by Inês Lagarto with special guest Terry Goodwin. Produced by Inês Lagarto and José Machado. Audio design by José Machado. Merch by Inês Lagarto. For more information about the show, please do check the links in our description. Thank you so much for listening to A Pixel at a Time. And don't forget to take it a pixel at a time.